Today we are looking at the very important primary source, titled the Declaration of Sentiments, which was produced and signed by attendees of the Seneca Falls Convention in 1848. First, let's take a look at the context. The Declaration of Sentiments is directly influenced by the Declaration of Independence. The source itself copies the structure and many of the words from the Declaration of Independence. The key difference is instead of talking about the tyranny of King George III over the American colonies, it is the tyranny of men over women. The second key piece of context is the Second Great Awakening, which influenced so many reform movements because of the central idea that humans should be working to create a better society. Also very important to understand, in this time period are the mainstream gender roles for women, including Republican motherhood, which is the idea that women should raise their children to practice the principles of republicanism. The other prevailing ideas were separate spheres and the cult of domesticity, which we can think of as the stereotypical roles of women: cooking, cleaning, raising the children, and being the moral compass of the family. The convention had about 300 attendees, including several historically famous women like Lucretia Mott and Elizabeth Cady Stanton. Frederick Douglass, the only African American present, was a key advocate for women's suffrage. This convention will inspire future conventions and crossover conventions that will include other movements like abolitionism and temperance. On to the main points of the address. The document lists all the ways that men hold a tyranny over women. A few of the highlights include: married women had no rights whatsoever. Women cannot vote or hold public office, cannot control their own wages or property, and have much higher expectations of how to act in social situations. The document then lists a number of resolves, which state their core beliefs about equality between the sexes. The authors and signers of the document are intending it for anyone they could persuade and raise awareness to, especially leaders and influential people. They are also intending to persuade other women to join their movement. The purpose is to clearly state the United States has not lived up to the ideals of the Declaration of Independence, as women have not been granted natural rights. They would ultimately want to achieve social, political, and economic advances for women, especially suffrage. The point of view is of activist women, mostly coming from the middle and upper classes of society in the Northeast, many of whom have Quaker origins. Moving on to who would agree and disagree with the document. In that time period, the positions staked out in the document would have been very radical. They would have found some allies in concurrent movements like abolitionists and temperance movements, but most of society would probably have laughed off the demands in that time period, stating it was not the proper role of women to engage in such activities. While most people in that time period would not have taken the document sincerely, it will have a huge lasting impact. The document is seen as the kickoff to the women's rights movement in the United States. The resolves in the document will set forth an ongoing fight to achieve women's rights. For AP tests, it comes up often with questions around the different waves of women's rights and feminist movements, notably the women's suffrage movement, which culminated with the passage of the 19th Amendment in 1920, and the feminist movement of the 1950s through 1970s, which were fighting for equal pay, equal opportunity, equal rights, and reproductive rights. Well, that does it for another super important document. If you liked the video, click that like button, subscribe, and share it with your friends.